The United States Indo-Pacific Command tracks a specific timeline for a crisis in the Taiwan Strait. According to their assessments, the Chinese military operates under a direct order to be capable of invading Taiwan by 2027. This strategic directive is backed by a rapid, large-scale military buildup, focused on modernizing naval and amphibious forces, specifically engineered to cross the strait. If those forces are deployed, the resulting conflict would trigger a severe global economic shock. Recent protections place the financial cost of a war over Taiwan at $10 trillion. To put that number in perspective, this graphic visualizes global economic output. That $10 trillion loss represents roughly 10% of the entire global GDP evaporating. Beyond the financial calculation, a successful invasion would result in a pronounced expansion of Chinese territory, severing trade routes and immediately disrupting the global technology supply chains running through the island. A Taiwan crisis operates as a direct catalyst for global economic contraction, moving the impact well beyond a regional military dispute. Because of these high stakes, foreign policy professionals and institutions like the Council on Foreign Relations explicitly designate deterring this invasion a vital national interest. Yet when we look at the American public's willingness to actually commit to this defense, we see a sharp divergence from the foreign policy consensus. This chart maps the divergence. While expert threat assessments track upward, Harvard Kennedy School polling reveals only 46% of Americans favor sending troops to defend Taiwan. This metric remains consistent over time, confirming a continuous trend of submajority support. This presents an analytical problem. If the loss of Taiwan costs $10 trillion and severely damages security, why does less than half the public support fighting to stop it? The risk to American personnel is already increasing. The U.S. government currently deploys troops as advisors to Taiwan's outlying islands, placing them in the immediate physical path of any cross-strait aggression. Effective deterrence requires advanced military hardware and domestic political resolve. Right now, the political foundation required to sustain a defense of Taiwan is highly vulnerable. To understand why experts rank Taiwan so highly, we need to look at how policymakers objectively determine which foreign conflicts warrant committing American military forces. This hierarchy of national interests is a framework to rank global priorities. The highest tier is a vital national interest, conditions necessary for U.S. survival. Defending a vital interest means securing key allies and ensuring the stability of global financial markets and energy supplies. Taiwan's geopolitical profile matches these exact criteria. Its position as a democratic partner in East Asia and its near monopoly on advanced semiconductor manufacturing directly tie its fate to global market stability. Because Taiwan fulfills these strict conditions, foreign policy experts explicitly classify its defense as a vital interest requiring military protection. By rigorous national security metrics, Taiwan meets the ultimate threshold for intervention. This makes the public hesitation to commit forces even more difficult for policymakers to navigate. When we analyze public sentiment toward Taiwan, the data initially suggests strong support, but this masks a deeper reluctance. This chart visualizes American sentiment, showing a commanding 77% of the public viewing Taiwan favorably. Simultaneously, over 40% identified China as their greatest enemy. But this broad awareness does not translate into a willingness to actually deploy U.S. military troops. We can observe this limitation in real time by looking at the ongoing war in Ukraine, which serves as a benchmark for modern American public stamina in foreign conflicts.
No American service members are fighting or dying in Ukraine, yet domestic political support for providing mere financial and material assistance has steadily declined over time. If policymakers struggle to maintain public support for proxy financial aid, they will face immense difficulties sustaining a direct military campaign that involves American casualties. Abstract positive sentiment toward a nation is insufficient to sustain the immense physical and economic sacrifices required to wage a great power war. This lack of majority public backing actively constrains the operational latitude of U.S. foreign policymakers. Without solid domestic support, leaders lack the political capital to mobilize industrial bases, secure sustained funding, or commit forces at the scale necessary to repel an invasion. This domestic hesitation is not a secret. It is closely monitored, quantified, and factored into the strategic calculus of the Chinese Communist Party. When foreign adversaries perceive a fracture in domestic political will, the credibility of our military threats begins to slowly erode. The United States maintains a formidable physical deterrent in the Indo-Pacific region, equipped with advanced weapon systems and significant forward-deployed assets. However, those assets lose their deterrent value if Beijing calculates that the American electorate will refuse to endure a prolonged conflict and ultimately demand a withdrawal. The disparity between expert threat assessments and public commitment is a critical vulnerability that directly undermines the strategy to protect Taiwan. To close this consensus gap before the 2027 window closes, researchers recommend a specific, urgent shift in policy. This translation matrix illustrates the required shift. Right now, arguments for defending Taiwan rely on abstract academic concepts, like preserving the first island chain or the rules-based order, which fail to resonate broadly. Policymakers must filter these geopolitical concepts through a messaging strategy that directly addresses the immediate concerns of the average citizen. The focus needs to anchor on tangible, pocketbook issues, framing the conflict in terms of local inflation, job security, and supply chain survival. One proposal is to conduct public, scenario-based economic wargames, shifting the focus away from classified military operations and towards civilian impacts. These simulations would clearly demonstrate how a Chinese blockade of Taiwan would immediately cripple American technology and manufacturing sectors, leading to severe domestic shortages. For this domestic messaging strategy to be effective, framing the defense of Taiwan must remain a strictly bipartisan effort in Washington. The American public will be far more likely to support a military deployment when they understand that a crisis in the Taiwan Strait is a direct threat to their own economic security. The visible erosion of deterrence in the Strait creates an urgent deadline for policymakers. Building a durable political consensus is a difficult process. It requires a sustained educational campaign that cannot be engineered in the middle of a sudden crisis. With the Chinese military's 2027 Readiness Directive rapidly approaching, the time available to bridge this domestic gap is heavily compressed. The United States invests trillions of dollars in physical defense systems, but spends comparatively little on educating the public regarding the geopolitical realities that necessitate those systems. Advanced weaponry cannot compensate for an electorate that is unprepared to endure the friction and immense costs of a great power conflict. While the military prepares its forces in the Pacific, the true foundation of American deterrence relies entirely on convincing the public why the defense of Taiwan actually matters.